Big addition, not gonna.
If you love wisdom, put your mind up to the ceiling. Don't let it stay in the gutter. Don't let your heart get all cluttered. No, I did not stutter. Listen to all that I've muttered. Your life will only go well if you in wisdom are lovers.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside. Come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you and I.
You and I. You and I.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside. Come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you and I.
Hey, what's going on? And a happy Thursday to you. This is JC Johnson, and you're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And on today's episode, we're actually discussing the wisdom of celebrity, right? When it comes to people who are in the public eye, what is something that we can learn from some of their positives and some of their negatives? And is this the type of lifestyle that we should want to live? More on that after this.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside.
Hey, what's going on, Wisdom family? Each week on For the Love of Wisdom, we promote a new and free audiobook that we believe you will benefit from and become wiser by listening to. On today's show, we're talking about the wisdom of celebrity. And so, the recommended book for this week is Dealing with Fame by Frank Shapiro. This book is about how to handle challenges and how to avoid the downward spiral that leads many celebrities to drink, drugs, and depression. To download this free book today, just visit audibletrial.com/lovewisdom. audibletrial.com/lovewisdom.
All right, we are back. This is For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets, and I'm your host, JC Johnson. So glad you could hang out with me this afternoon as we are discussing the wisdom of celebrity. All right, now, we looked at a lot in the first hour. It was a whole lot, right? I mean, it's too much to recap. So if you missed that, don't worry about it. You can always listen to past episodes online. You can go anywhere where podcasts are available. That's iTunes, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Play Music, even on Amazon. You can just, if you have an Amazon Alexa enabled device, you can just say, Alexa, play For the Love of Wisdom, and you'll be able to listen to the first hour of this show. So don't worry about missing it. If you don't catch it live, you can always get the podcast, and you can always connect with me on Twitter, and you can join the conversation. My Twitter handle is @LoveWisePodcast, so you can just find me on there, and we can chop it up. So today we are discussing the wisdom of celebrity, right? So what does that mean? What does that have to do with us? And you might think, if you're listening to this and you're not a celebrity, you might say, well, if I'm not a celebrity, then this doesn't apply to me, or it never will apply to me. But guess what? You never know. You never know that you may become a very well-known person. You may become a person who is celebrated, right? And that's part of what the definition of the word celebrity means. That's what we talked about on the first hour. We talked about how it basically is a person who is not just a famous person as we would think of it today, but literally that word can be a symbol to honor, right? It means that someone this is a person who people are singing the praises of. It means that this is a person who is popular, right? And this is where we get this whole idea of being famous or being a celebrity. And one thing that we discussed too is that there are people who are literally famous for nothing other than being famous. So it's not like they found a cure for cancer, or they rescued 500 orphans from a fire or something like that. But it's as simple as this is a person who got caught on a sex tape that's been published online, or this is a person who posted a controversial comment, something silly on a social media post, or maybe someone that put a funny video on YouTube, and now all of a sudden this person is famous, right? But it's a pretty shallow type of fame. It's a shallow type of celebrity. And one thing we looked at too before the break is that their celebrities do face a lot of difficulty in this life. They have a lot of challenges. And one thing we were mentioning, Christina Aguilera, was she just said in an article a couple days ago, she talked about why she won't date a fellow celebrity. And she said, I've had opportunities to date a celebrity or a person in the business, but there's got to be something wrong with you. Listen to what she's saying. She said, there's got to be something wrong with you if you want to be in this business. That's a strong statement, right? She says, I definitely have my issues. I think that I can only handle one celebrity in the relationship, and I need to be it. So that's her. That's Christina Aguilera. She doesn't want to have to deal with a celebrity, and she's a celebrity herself. So that just goes to show you some of the difficulties that can come along with that. Now, what kind of troubles do celebrities have? Well, if you've read any tabloid or seen any news story within the last 50 years, you'll see that there are many celebrities who have had trouble with the law. And if we just focus on last year alone, this article breaks down celebrities who have had trouble with the law in 2017. All right, and this is from Wonderwall, article by Mark Gray, and he mentions a lot of people. So two people that he talks about are Shia LaBeouf and Aaron Carter. And Shia LaBeouf from the popular show on the Disney Channel, and he's a child star who then went later on to star in big blockbuster movies like Transformers, things like that. So this is someone who has had a lot of experience in the industry. And Shia LaBeouf, let's take a look at him. It says the actor's history of legal woes is well documented. In 2017, he had another run-in. He was arrested in Savannah, Georgia for public intoxication, disorderly conduct, and obstruction. So this was pretty bad, but one of the things that they were saying is really bad is he was saying racial comments, such as when he got arrested by the cop, he said, "Hey, how can you arrest someone of your own kind?" Ouch. Yeah, that's crazy. I'm sure he didn't think that was going to be recorded, but it was. So it was pretty bad. So a few days after he was arrested, he apologized, and he said he had hit a bottom. And he said his outright disrespect for authority is problematic, to say the least, and completely destructive, to say the worst. It is a new low. A low, I hope, is a bottom. And the thing about this is, things like this happen all the time, right? We see, people get arrested all the time. People make bad decisions all the time. But when you're a celebrity, these moments don't become private moments. They become a spectacle for all the world to see. And that's what makes it so difficult. What about Aaron Carter, the famous singer? Aaron Carter, it says he was arrested on DUI and marijuana charges in Georgia. According to Habersham County Sheriff's Office, Captain Floyd Canup, Aaron was driving all over the road and driving into the median. Aaron refused to take a breathalyzer. The pop star, who appeared disheveled in his mugshot, said he was targeted because why? Because he's famous. That's what he said. He said the only reason I was pulled over is because I'm famous. The only reason that I was in this trouble at all is because I was famous. And it says here that he actually went to Walmart, and he went to Walmart because one of his tires blew out on his Chevy Suburban, right? And so he needed to get it fixed. So he went into Walmart, and supposedly, after they fixed his car, he couldn't pay the bill for a new tire, and they called the police, right? So imagine, this can be pretty bad. But what ended up happening, and because he's famous, it said that one of his fans actually paid the tab for him. It was $110, and they paid for it. I mean, so again, as I mentioned earlier in the show, that's one of the perks, I guess, of being a celebrity. So in spite of all these negative things that are happening to him, because he is so well known, somebody is excited to be able to help him, even though he shouldn't need that kind of help. But I mean, I don't know his financial, situation, but you would think that he would be able to afford that, but apparently he wasn't able to, and a fan helped him out. So, hey, if you make good music, hopefully one day if you need to, a fan will buy a tire for you, right? That's one of the advantages, but there are many disadvantages, because if he wasn't famous, he wouldn't be in this situation, most likely, to begin with, or at least no one would know about it, right? So those are the pros and cons of being a celebrity. When we come back, we're going to take a look at Brian Head Welch, who is he's formerly in the band Korn. He's actually back in Korn recently, but he talks about how his life was almost destroyed because of that celebrity status he had. So we're gonna look at more on that after this. We're on North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you. Tasha Nicole, I'll Pray. It's an awesome song. I always like listening to that one. It's cool.
It's your boy, Tear It Up, Tommy Tom from Beyond Sports, and you're listening to For the Love of Wisdom
with your host, Jason Johnson.
All right, you're listening on North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you. This is your host, JC Johnson. And right now, on today's episode, we are discussing the wisdom of celebrity. All right, so we're looking at what this means exactly. We broke down what the meaning of the word celebrity is. Basically, just as it sounds, it's somebody who is celebrated. It's someone who is well known, they have some sort of notoriety. They are being praised, or they are supposed to be worthy of praise. Right now, there are plenty of different ways that people become celebrities. Sometimes it's for noble reasons, and sometimes for not so noble reasons, right? For example, one person becomes a celebrity for leading a bus boycott to further the civil rights movement, whereas another person becomes a celebrity by being caught in a sex tape, right? There are, plenty of different ways to do this. But we're looking at maybe what are the best ways to do it. Now, before the break, I told you that we were going to take a look at Brian Head Welch. Okay, so Brian Head Welch is in the band Korn, a very popular rock band. They've had plenty of hits, and Brian, he actually shocked everybody in 2005 when he basically said that he was going to leave Korn because he wanted to get right with God, right? And he wanted to get out of the rock star lifestyle. In his book, he actually talked about many of the dark times that he had. He talks about his cycle with addiction, and he was on all types of drugs, heavy drinking, all of that. And that celebrity lifestyle, I think, was just too much for him. So basically, and he talks a lot about how he was living a dangerous lifestyle, and how he found a path after that which was better for him, and not only for him but also for his daughter, as he was a single father and he felt like he wasn't being a good example to her. So he wanted to get his life together. One thing that he did was he basically put himself through rehab. He locked himself in a hotel room and withdrew from the drugs. Very difficult time for him, but he talked about how freeing that was for him. So here's some information about him. Here it says, basically, he talks a lot about his shocking embrace of God, you know, because for many people they said, well, this doesn't seem like the type of person who would eventually, you know, start talking about Jesus, you know, start talking about God and being saved. You know, this didn't seem like the Brian Welch that people knew. So this was really shocking to everyone when he said that he wanted to get out of the lifestyle that he was living, and he actually wanted to get to know God, and he wanted to get right with God. So he talks a lot about his years with the band. Originally, when he had first started the band, that I think they formed back in '93, and he talks about his strong addictions to methamphetamines, which really got in the way. You know, they were still successful, so it didn't stop him from being successful in music, but it stopped him from being successful in his personal life, and that's where it really counts, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, you can be praised by everyone, right? You can be celebrated by everyone. But if you're failing miserably in your own life, if you're failing morally, if you're failing as a parent, right? You're failing as a friend. You're failing as a son, as a brother, as a sister, as a cousin, right? If you're failing in all these other areas, then what does it really matter? You know, what does it really mean at the end of the day? So ultimately, he struggled with drugs, but it led him to want to seek after God. And he really tried a lot of different ways to free himself from drugs. But it seems like he wasn't able to do it. But he talks about how when he came to know God, that's how he was able to do it. Now, one thing that is in his book that was interesting, when he discussed this chaotic end to his time in the band Korn, and how his faith influenced his relationship, even with his daughter, his life, his music. He also describes the challenging but rewarding events that happened as a result, right? Because when he publicly declared that he wanted to get his life right, and he left the band, it caused a lot of problems in his life that he didn't have before. And as you can imagine, when you're in a band and you tell your bandmates, I don't want to be in this anymore, it can cause some issues. Interestingly though, in his case, he actually went back to Korn about 10 years later. He started performing with them again and even released some new music with them. And when he came back, he was a little bit concerned that people would judge him. People would speak poorly of him, or even question his faith, maybe to say he's not a real Christian anymore because he went back in the band. But this is one of the problems that celebrities have, right? Now, the average person who is not well known, if they decide they want to leave their band and come back to their band, no one's really gonna know, no one's really gonna care, right? But when you're somebody who is in that public eye, when you're in the spotlight, people scrutinize every move that you make. Everyone has something to say, right? So he went back to Korn, and he did it saying that, he knew that there was a lot of people who wouldn't understand it, especially those within the Christian community. But one thing that I respect about him is that, he at least said, hey, this is just something that I really feel that I should do, and I'm sorry if it makes some people offended or they don't understand, but I really believe that this is a place where God is leading me to. So in his case, only God knows. We don't really know what's going on there, but one of the good things about it is that it seems that he was able to get himself clean and sober. He was able to approach the band in a whole different way versus where he was at back in 2005 when he had hit rock bottom. One thing he said in his book about that time, he said, there was a battle in my brain and my soul, and I wasn't sure who I was going to let win. this wasn't the drugs talking to me. This was something different. It was almost like, well, it sounded weird, but it was almost like God and the devil were fighting over my soul. Like it was a spiritual fight for my life. But it was up to me to make the final choice. And that was, powerful. I mean, that really just speaks to anyone who is in any type of strong addiction, or anyone who is at that crossroads in their life where they're having to make that decision. Are they going to, surrender to what God is saying, or are they going to go with what they want to do? And that is always the hardest thing, isn't it? To say, am I going to follow God, or am I going to follow my own desires, which are, contrary to what God would have for me in my life? It can be challenging for anyone, not just for a celebrity, but especially for a celebrity. Somebody who's in the public eye, somebody who's going to be criticized and spoken poorly of in tabloids. Imagine if you had to deal with that with every decision you made in life. But more on that after this. You're on North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you.
You're now listening to For the Love of Wisdom on NorthCoastUnderground.com, where the underground starts with who? No other but you.
Right, welcome back. You're listening to North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you. This is your host, JC Johnson. All right, so on today's episode, we are discussing the wisdom of celebrity. Now, we've discussed plenty of information here today, and I don't want you to have a brain overload, but I got a little bit more for you. So if you could just hang tight, here's some more information dealing with this whole idea of celebrity. Who is the celebrity? What is this? Is this something that we should strive to be? Because it seems like in our culture, being well known, being famous, this seems to be the thing that everybody is trying to attain. But it comes with its challenges. And we were just talking about Brian Head Welch, who is a part of the band Korn, and he actually had left Korn back in 2005. And because he was addicted to drugs, he felt like he wasn't being a good father to his daughter, and ultimately his life was in a downward spiral. So he got out of that, and he got himself clean. He even began to have a relationship with God, which is something he said he didn't have before. Despite, being raised in a Christian household, he actually had went far away from that. So later on, he rejoined the band. He said from a much different perspective, from a clearer headspace, and hopefully, that will work for him this time around. That's something that can be a challenge. Being in that type of industry, with all of the different temptations and obstacles that can come as a result, it can be hard for anybody. So definitely we have to pray for people like that. Pray that that God will protect them and give them wisdom, because it is hard. And looking at the book of the week, as mentioned earlier on the show, every week there's a particular book that relates to the show topic that I want to be able to share with you as a listener, because I think that is something that you're going to benefit from. And the book this week is a book by Frank Shapiro, and it's called Dealing with Fame. And one thing that he said in the book that really stood out, he said, no matter who you are or how famous you become, there are only two main emotions in life: pain or pleasure. I'll say that one more time. No matter who you are or how famous you become, there are only two main emotions in life: pain or pleasure. That's true. It doesn't matter who you are, right? You still have to deal with the same stuff that everyone else has to deal with. And I think that for whatever reason in our culture, we've come to believe that if you become famous, if you become well known, then all of a sudden your troubles are going to go away. All of a sudden you're going to be problem free. But as the Notorious B.I.G. is known to say, more money, more problems. And that's so true. One thing it says here in the book, it says, it seems that just about everyone wants to be famous these days. Even if an individual has no talent, there are countless television programs that will satisfy the apparent need to have their 5 minutes of fame. And that's true, isn't it? Why is it that everyone wants to be famous? What is it about that? Why do you want everyone to know your face? Why do you want everyone to know who you are and where you live and all of that? That's not an easy pill to swallow, but I don't think people really think about that until they're in that situation. You know, people enjoy the fame at first, but that's short-lived when they realize that, you know, as Eminem said in the song The Way I Am, I can't even, you know, use the bathroom. That's the cleaner way of what he said. He said, I can't even use the bathroom without someone coming up to me and asking me for an autograph, right? He said, I can't even go out to eat with my daughter without somebody coming up to me. And that's the reality. That is what people deal with when they are in the public eye, and it can be really stressful. One thing it says here in the book, it says, there are many others who do not have talent and go on to have 10, 20, or even a few hours worth of fame. And of course, there are the very few who have what it takes to make fame and celebrity last a lifetime and beyond. But what preparation do people have for what is going to happen to their life when fame comes knocking? My experience is that they have none. And that's very true. That's not something that they teach you in school. Oh, here's what you do if one day you become famous. There's no class on that. One thing he says here, there are myriads of magazines and publications highlighting the lives of individual celebrities. The general public cannot get enough gossip about their favorite idols. But there are few books published about fame itself and the effects it can have on the unprepared wannabe. Dealing with fame covers with life before, during, and after fame, as well as looking at specific challenges and how they can be handled to avoid the downward spiral that leads many celebrities to drink, drugs, and depression. I mean, this is an incredible book. This is something I came across recently, and I said I have to recommend this to you as a For the Love of Wisdom listener, because I mean, this is just some great insight. It's definitely something worth checking out. And here are a few quotes from some notable people as it relates to this whole idea of fame. Here's one from John Wooden. He said, talent is God-given. Be humble. Fame is man-given. Be grateful. Conceit is self-given. Be careful. Well said. Definitely well said. That's from John Wooden. Here's another one from A.R. Rahman. And not Top Ramen, but A.R. Rahman. He said, success comes to those who dedicate everything to their passion in life. To be successful, it is also very important to be humble and never let fame or money travel to your head. Definitely true. Here's one from Sun Tzu, the author of The Art of War. He said, a good commander is benevolent and unconcerned with fame. And that is really true. And he's talking about in war, right? You don't want to go to war with somebody who's just trying to make headlines, you know, with somebody who's just trying to be controversial or do something that's going to stir up the enemy so that he can get his name or his picture in the paper. No, you don't want to follow somebody like that. Here's one from Jeremy Luke, and he said, the definition of success to me is not necessarily a price tag, not fame, but having a good life and being able to say I did the right thing at the end of the day. And that's true. That's true. That's what it's all about. It's about your integrity at the end of the day, right? It's not about all of the fame that you attain. It's not about all the money that you attain. It's about being able to look yourself in the mirror and be happy with who you are. Here's one from Marilyn Monroe. She's very, well known, definitely super famous in her day. And here's what she had to say about fame. She said, fame doesn't fulfill you. It warms you a bit, but that warmth is temporary. And we see just the way her life ended. We see that it is very temporary. You're here today and then you're gone tomorrow and then people forget about you. Well, in her case, people haven't forgotten about her, but guess what? They went on with their lives. Nobody, stopped living because she stopped living. They had to go on with what they had to do. And then here's one from David Bowie. He said, fame itself doesn't really afford you anything more than a good seat in a restaurant. Hey, and that's said from David Bowie himself. He said, hey, look, fame is really not all that. So what? You get a good seat in a restaurant. But other than that, there's a lot of headache, right? There's a lot of problems that come with it. And it's something that most people don't think about when they decide to jump into that type of lifestyle. So we are going to take a quick break. So more on that after this. You are listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And of course, we are on North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you. When we come back, we're going to take a look at what the Bible has to say about being well known, being famous in the days and times that we are living in. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, you're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets.
With your host, Jason Johnson.
Right, welcome back. You're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And this is your host, JC Johnson. We're getting ready to conclude the show for today. But before we go, just as a quick recap, today we've been discussing the wisdom of celebrity, right? So we're talking about people who are well known, people who are praised by others, right? People who are put on a pedestal, basically, in the days and times that we're living in. This is something that is very relevant because a lot of people want to be famous. There's something about that draws people. They say, wow, if only I could be famous. If only I could be on TV, if only I could be on the radio, if only I could be well known. But that comes with a lot of challenges, right? So it's not all fun and games. So let's take a look at what the Bible has to say when it comes to this issue, because I think the Bible has something to say about everything. So if we look at 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 and 4, it says, it is not fancy hair, gold jewelry, or fine clothes that should make you beautiful. No, your beauty should come from inside you. The beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. That beauty will never disappear. It is worth very much to God. Now, why choose this portion of scripture here? Because it is basically saying you don't have to be radiant in the world's eyes. You don't have to be someone who is out there, someone who all can see and all can say, wow, this person is so beautiful, this person is so awesome. The main thing it's saying is that you should focus on becoming well known for what is going on internally, right? What is going on inside your heart. It's about having a gentle and a quiet spirit, because this is a beauty that will never disappear. This is something that's worth very much to God. That's what should matter most. It shouldn't matter, how many likes, I'm getting on Instagram, or, how many people know who I am when I walk down the street. No, this is about having character, right? Being a good person on the inside. Exodus chapter 20, verses 4 and 5 says, you must not make any idols. Don't make any statues of or pictures of anything up in the sky or anything on the earth or of anything down in the water. Don't worship or serve idols of any kind, because I, the Lord, am your God, and I hate when my people are worshiping other gods. People who sin against me become my enemies, and I will punish them, and I will punish their children, their grandchildren, and even their great-grandchildren. Now, before you say, wow, that sounds pretty harsh, keep in mind, if God made all people, right, then he has the right to say, I don't want you worshiping other people. I don't want you worshiping things that were created by people, right? I want you to worship me. Because if he's the one that made us, right, then really he's the only one who is truly praiseworthy. He's the only one who is truly worthy of worship, right? But when you look at a person who is a celebrity, when you put them on this pedestal and you say, this person is so great, this person is so wonderful, you're putting them up way too high. And guess what happens? You know, the people that are praised 1 minute and they'll say, oh, this is such a great individual, or they give, you know, millions of dollars to charity and they do this and that, right? The moment they have some sort of moral failure or something happens, then all of a sudden, all those people that were praising them begin hating them. They begin gossiping about them. They begin talking negatively about them in the press. It can happen just like that. Instantly, you can go from being praised to being despised, right? So why would you want to live for that kind of praise? What matters most is what God thinks about you, not what other people think about you. And remember, if you're on the giving end of that praise, just remember that just because somebody is well known, just because they are in the spotlight, doesn't mean that they are worthy of your worship, right? So God is saying here, only God is worthy of worship. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 7 through 10. This one is a little lengthy, but just stay with me here. It says, when we came into the world, we brought nothing. And when we die, we can take nothing out. So if we have food and clothes, we will be satisfied with that. People who want to be rich, or we can also say famous, because most of the times in the days and times we live in, the two go hand in hand, right? So if a person wants to become rich or famous, it brings temptations, a lot of temptations, and they are caught in a trap. They begin to want many foolish things that will hurt them. These things ruin and destroy people, just as we were talking about with Brian Head Welch, and he talked about how he struggled with drug addiction, which was so powerful because of the access that he had. I mean, when you have millions of dollars to blow and you're addicted to drugs, what are you going to do? You're going to buy as much drugs as possible, right? And when you're famous, there are people who will give you drugs for free, even though you can afford your own drugs, right? So you really, you're in a catch-22 when it comes to that. It's very hard to get out of once you're in that situation. And there are managers and promoters and people who want artists to be in that intoxicated state because then they're able to take advantage of them. That's a whole nother thing, though. It says here that some people have turned away from what we believe because they want to get more and more money. But they have caused themselves a lot of pain and sorrow. So, very sobering but true. And then 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 5 and 6, it says, young people, I have something to say to you too. You should accept the authority of the elders. You should all have a humble attitude in dealing with each other. God is against the proud, but he is kind to the humble. So be humble under God's powerful hand, then he will lift you up when the right time comes. Now, you know, there are some of you who might say, well, is there anything wrong with being famous? Is there anything wrong with being a celebrity? And no, there's nothing wrong with it in and of itself. There's nothing evil about it, right? You may become famous, or you might be listening now and you already are famous. But guess what? Seeking after it is not a good idea because it comes with a lot of trouble. But if God sees fit to make you become famous, to raise you up in that way, then hey, no one can stop him from doing that if that's his plan for your life. But just make sure you're prepared. This is JC Johnson. I'm out. We'll see you next time.
Now listen, my power is money, and money makes the world go round.
Money, power, respect, I get it higher, learn it, yeah, I'm with it. Only get better with time, keep got on my mind with wisdom, there's no limit. There's no limit, get up and get it. Can achieve the impossible, conquer every obstacle. Exhausted from grinding, constantly push and do what they say I could. Life is what you make it. Knowledge is power, don't let them take it.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside. Come inside. Come inside. The truth will surely rescue you and I. You and I. You and I. If you're in love with wisdom, come inside. Come inside. Come inside. The truth will surely rescue you and I.
Now lay me down to sleep. I pray, Lord, my soul to see. If I should die,